fear, the horror. The hell is this guy? Come after me, arrest me. Let's just get it over with.
Nobody wants President Newsom either. Nobody believes in that guy. That guy's a f***ing con man. Everything he did in California, from trying to mandate vaccines for kids to being caught public without a mask and lying about the fact that he was outdoors.
Yeah.
Nobody believes in that guy. He's just a politician.
Imagine being praised as the future of American politics and then watching your biggest cheerleaders turn into your worst nightmare. That's exactly what happened to Gavin Newsom. One moment, he was California's golden boy, polished, confident, and seen as a rising star. The next, Bill Maher accidentally torched his reputation, Joe Rogan buried it, and even law enforcement exposed him as a political actor hiding behind fake outrage. This wasn't just criticism. It was a public unmasking. And what followed was one of the most brutal political humiliations in recent memory. But let's start where it all began.
But he said, I don't think he could win. I don't think he could win. He's too progressive coming from this state and what he's done in this state to win in any southern state, any red state. I disagreed, but this is a progressive African-American owned station, and I'm sure they like you, but he doesn't think you can win. What do you say to that if you could win the... Look at the swing state. There's only 8 of them.
Bill Maher has always been blunt, but usually he spares his friends in the Democratic establishment from the harshest blows. That's why Gavin Newsom probably thought he was safe. But when Maher sat down for a casual conversation about who could realistically run for president, Newsom's name came up. And Maher's words weren't the glowing endorsement the governor expected. Instead, Maher dropped a truth bomb. He admitted that many progressives, even those who like Newsom, don't believe he can win on the national stage. His policies are too progressive, his reputation too California, and his style too disconnected from the realities of middle America.
I know many of you are feeling deep anxiety, stress, and fear, but I want you to know that you are the antidote to that fear and that anxiety. What Donald Trump wants most is your fealty, your silence to be complicit in this moment. Do not give in to him.
Maher didn't say it with venom. In fact, it was almost offhand. But sometimes the most devastating blows are the ones delivered casually, with no intent. For a politician obsessed with optics, this was brutal. Bill Maher wasn't some Republican firebrand or conservative critic. He was supposed to be friendly territory. And yet, here he was saying the quiet part out loud. Gavin Newsom may look like a president, but he doesn't act like one. And if Maher's words planted doubt, the next voice would blow that doubt wide open. But Maher wasn't the only one pulling back the curtain. What happened next would send shockwaves far beyond California.
Where's your decency, Mr. President? Stop. Rescind this order. It's illegal and unconstitutional. And I said it, I'll say it again, it's immoral. You're creating the conditions that you claim you're solving, and you're not. And you're putting real people's lives at risk. This is a serious moment, and it requires serious leadership. And it's time for you to be a commander-in-chief of the United States of America. And I will have your back if you want to work in a relationship of trust and truth in the spirit of our founding fathers. But you come after poor kids, you come after families, we will do everything in our power to stand up and stand in your way.
Enter Joe Rogan, the podcast king with millions of listeners spanning every corner of the political spectrum. If Maher was the spark, Rogan was the wildfire. On his show, Rogan didn't just critique Newsom, he shredded him. He called him a con man, a politician so carefully manufactured that he felt less like a leader and more like a cardboard cutout. Rogan made a powerful comparison. He said that whether you love or hate Donald Trump or RFK Jr., at least you know they're real people, flawed, human, authentic. With Newsom, Rogan argued, you don't get that. Instead, you get a packaged product, slick hair, polished speeches, and zero substance behind the smile.
What happened with how this riot started is that ICE was serving a series of criminal warrants at a business being investigated for money laundering, customs fraud, and serious violations on sending money to criminal cartels that in Colombia and Mexico that fund cartel activities in the United States. It's a part of an overall conspiracy that ICE is investigating. So we were arresting bad people. We were enforcing laws and following up on a serious criminal investigation on cartel financing. So that's exactly what ICE did. And ICE took a lot of bad people off the street that day. We arrested a sexual predator, arrested gang members, arrested somebody that had an armed robbery conviction.
Nobody thinks he's a real human, Rogan declared. And for many listeners, that line hit like a knockout punch. This wasn't just one man's opinion. Rogan is one of the most influential cultural voices in America. His comments don't just echo, they ripple across millions of conversations online. Within hours, clips of Rogan's rant spread across social media, racking up views and fueling memes mocking Newsom's authenticity. Suddenly, the narrative wasn't that Newsom was a potential president. It was that he was a political actor, a man so desperate to look like a leader that he forgot how to actually be one. And if Rogan's words rattled him, the meltdown that followed made everything 10 times worse.
Then the reporter asked me, well, could Governor Newsom or Mayor Bass be arrested? I said, well, no one's above the law. If they cross the line and commit a crime, absolutely they can. So there was no discussion about arresting Newsom. And so, what he's done, he's failed that state. He waited 2 days of that city burning and people getting hurt, officers being assaulted before he made any declaration of an unlawful assembly. He's late to the game. President Trump isn't late to the game.
Gavin Newsom had spent years cultivating the image of a calm, controlled politician. But in the weeks after Maher and Rogan's public takedowns, cracks began to show. Reporters noticed it first. His once polished press conferences became defensive, filled with shaky answers and visible irritation. Instead of brushing off criticism, he seemed obsessed with responding to it, a sign that the pressure was getting under his skin. The breaking point came during the chaos in Los Angeles. Riots and protests broke out, and all eyes turned to the governor for leadership. But instead of stepping up, Newsom stumbled. His response was late, inconsistent, and, worst of all, desperate. When he finally addressed the situation, his words didn't calm tensions. They revealed just how rattled he was. Gone was the confident politician. In his place was a man scrambling to control a narrative slipping through his fingers. And that's when he made a move that would haunt him. He decided to pick a fight with ICE. But if you thought things were bad, his next stunt would expose him more than any critic ever could.
He's dictating what universities themselves can teach. He's targeting law firms and the judicial branch that are the foundations of an orderly and civil society. He's calling for a sitting governor to be arrested for no other reason than to, in his own words, for getting elected. And we all know this Saturday, he's ordering our American heroes, the United States military, and forcing them to put on a vulgar display to celebrate his birthday, just as other failed dictators have done in the past. Look, this isn't just about protests here in Los Angeles. When Donald Trump sought blanket authority to commandeer the National Guard, he made that order apply to every state in this nation. This is about all of us.
It was pure political theater. Standing before the cameras, Gavin Newsom took a defiant tone. He painted federal agents as villains, accused them of tearing families apart, and then did something almost unthinkable. He dared ICE to arrest him. "Come after me. Arrest me. Let's just get it over with," he thundered. To his supporters, it was a show of courage. To his critics, it was reckless grandstanding. But here's the twist. The narrative he pushed wasn't true. The ICE operation in question wasn't about families or children. It wasn't about innocent people being dragged from their homes. The truth was that ICE agents were carrying out arrests tied to a cartel-linked money laundering ring, complete with gang members, convicted criminals, and even a predator. These weren't random families out for ice cream. They were dangerous individuals funding international crime networks. So when Newsom painted ICE as monsters, the truth eventually exposed him. His bravery wasn't bravery at all. It was theater. Optics over facts. A speech designed to manipulate emotions, not reflect reality. And the man who tore apart that illusion? ICE Director Tom Homan. And when Homan entered the conversation, Newsom's performance collapsed completely. Tom Homan is not a man known for sugarcoating, and when asked about Newsom's comments, he delivered a brutal reality check. If he commits a crime, yes, he can be arrested. No one's above the law, Homan said plainly. But he didn't stop there. He laid out exactly what ICE was doing that day, arresting criminals tied to dangerous cartels. Not families, not kids, criminals. The contrast was devastating. On one side, ICE was removing violent offenders from the streets. On the other, Gavin Newsom was crying in front of cameras, spinning the story into a humanitarian crisis that never existed. Homan's blunt words went viral. Suddenly, the image of Newsom as a fearless defender collapsed into what it really was: a desperate stunt designed to score political points. And with every headline, every viral clip, Newsom's credibility drained away. But instead of backing down, Newsom doubled down. And the result was even more humiliating. After being exposed, Newsom didn't retreat. Instead, he leaned even harder into performance. He gave speeches with trembling voices, eyes glistening, and carefully timed pauses meant to appear emotional. He framed himself as the last line of defense against Trump, calling on other governors to rise up in resistance. To his allies, it was stirring. To everyone else, it looked staged. Observers noticed something off: the tears that never quite fell, the pauses that felt rehearsed, the anger that seemed scripted. More and more, Newsom looked less like a leader and more like an actor desperate for applause. Even some Hollywood figures began mocking him. The irony was brutal. In a state known for movies and theater, the governor himself looked like he was auditioning for a role instead of governing. And by then, the damage was irreversible. Piece by piece, Gavin Newsom's carefully crafted image disintegrated. Bill Maher had shown that even allies didn't believe in him. Joe Rogan blasted him as fake and soulless. Tom Homan revealed his theatrics for what they were. And through it all, Newsom's own desperate performances only made things worse. The result? A man once touted as a future president, now seen as an empty suit, a political actor fumbling through his lines. And here's the dark irony. Newsom built his career on optics: the perfect hair, the polished speeches, the image of control. But when the lights got too bright, the mask melted away. What was left wasn't a bold leader. It was just another politician exposed as hollow. So now the real question isn't whether Gavin Newsom can survive this round of humiliation. The question is, can he ever convince America that he's more than a performance? Because once the mask slips, you can't put it back on. And if even Bill Maher and Joe Rogan, two voices from completely different worlds, are both saying the same thing about you, maybe it's not just criticism. Maybe it's the truth. And that truth, it's darker than any script Gavin Newsom ever thought he could control.